Aloha and good day. This is Clint
Hello.
Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate. I am broadcasting on the KAOI radio group, 7 a.m. Monday morning on 11:10 a.m., 97.6 FM, 98.7 FM, and 95.5 on the west side. We have a special guest with us today. That's Yuki Lei Sugimura of the
Hi.
Maui County Council. Aloha, how you doing?
Aloha.
And of course, my co-host, Byron Yap of Axia Home Loans. Thank you so much for setting this up, Byron. I really appreciate it.
Good. The reason I wanted to bring Yuki on, because in the last month, I've run into two people that I barely know, and we started talking, and they kept bringing up Yuki's name.
Really?
Yes. They said, I don't know how it came up. They said, one of the things we like about Yuki is we had a problem, whether it was solved or not. They said, hey, she at least responded to our problem or our concern. So I guess to start it off, Yuki, is I guess what I'm interested in is, what was your life before politics? What did you do before politics?
Oh, you're serious about that question. I love it. So before I was elected, I had my own small business called Connect, CONNEC. And I basically did community engagement. And what I love to mention, and I did it for 10 years, was I helped with building and developing Wailuku First Friday. So I did street festivals and provided free entertainment for people to just walk down the streets, go to all the food booths. I had 2 entertainment stages. And one of the things I love to do is fundraise. So I would, actively be fundraising so that we could do all these free events. But that's part of probably a good example of the work that I did before I was elected. But I did community engagement. Wailuku Town was one of my priority areas, because before that I worked for Mayor James Kimo Apana, and I was a Wailuku revitalization coordinator. When Wailuku Town, if you remember, it was all like, boarded up, and it looked like that at some point. And when I came back, I worked on a project, and I worked in the Office of Economic Development, and Mayor Apana at that time said that he wanted me to help bring back life to the town. So through networking and community engagement, we started doing festivals. So I've been a real big advocate of bringing people together. I call it body heat. The town needed to bring back people to enjoy it, enjoy the history, enjoy the stories. And I grew up there. So I had a lot of things going for why I love doing that job. And then Wailuku First Friday came about, and the town asked me to help them build it and develop it. They launched it for the first year, and then they asked me to grow it. So I can't take credit for the whole thing. I think it was modeled after Chinatown in Honolulu, where they would have First Friday art festivals or art night. And anyway, so that's what I did. And of course, my main priority is always my family, right? That's why we do what we do. And I grew up here, born and raised here on Maui. So I've seen our island change, and yeah.
And everybody drew you to politics that start kind of ignited the flame for the politics? Because you're on your second term or your first term?
I'm on my 3rd term now.
Third term, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm in my 5th year. So what actually flamed that is I say, since I was forever, like when I was in high school, I graduated from Baldwin High School. I was always like class president. I was always involved in engagement. So it was kind of a natural step for me. I also did when U.S. Senator Danny Noy, you remember him, right? When he was running, and their campaign in Honolulu asked me to be a co-chair for his re-election. That really kind of set me on, ignited me to go down this path even further. So I think it's in my genes, and it was in the stars. And it was a time when my son graduated from high school, and then he went off to college, and I no longer had to, worry about him, because this job is not a part-time job. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, sorry, I'm going on too long.
No, thank you so much. I mean, that's one of the things that allowed Wailuku to flourish. And obviously they have continuing programs out there to get more business and parking and infrastructure into place.
Right.
It's really valuable and always been, to me, I've thought about getting into politics myself, but unfortunately my wife won't let me. So you don't have to worry about seeing me. It's more than just putting my input into the meetings when I get the opportunity. And we do a little bit of work ourselves. We like to work with Friends of the Children's Justice Center.
Oh, I love them too. Yeah.
Oh, they're the best. They really
They're
work
having,
through Maui United Way, and there's a lot of abused and neglected kids all over the world, and they just do a phenomenal job of maximizing the use of resources to help local abused and neglected children of Maui. And in all of Maui County, they're flying out to Lanai and Molokai to just really get out there and help people. And we've been just so happy with what they put forward. So we do toy drives and fun drives to get them. And I'd like to see more resources for them in the future, because they really get it, and they are so efficient at getting those to the people who need it. So we've been
amazing.
really glad. And then
Yeah.
we also provided some of the initial funds for the Nahalio Maui, the Community Land Trust. And that's been great. It's a way that they've cycled out the board and continue it on to the next group of people to put fresh faces on it, and how they've grown the number of properties to really actually create affordable housing in perpetuity. That's kind of a hard thing to do. And that comes to a couple of questions that come up right now. Housing is like the most important thing because we have to have a roof over our head. And, for a lot of people in Maui, that's a car these days, and the big question, a lot of people are having is about the eviction moratorium. So what are you seeing now that we've just come to the end of the eviction moratorium, and what is your thoughts on it right now?
So I was just curious what you all are seeing, because I know what the process has been. I did 3 town hall, not town hall. I did 2 roundtables with Judge Cardoza, attorneys, and Legal Aid Society, and Bevan with mediation services. So I know the law pretty good, and the mediation services that were put in place by this last legislative session, so that everyone would have to go through mediation before they can get evicted, right? Because you want people to talk story.
Yeah. So
landlord tenants, you can't just go in and, the landlord just can't say, I'm going to evict you tomorrow, but there's a process that you need to go through. But, and through the county and CARES Act and the Rescue Act, funds were put in so that people who qualified and lost their jobs or had their hours cut back because of COVID, they could apply for rental assistance, right? So that when I really thought about it, I said, who we're helping? We're helping the landowners who have the mortgages, because the payments go directly to the landowner to help cover the deficiency that the tenant has. So, and since August 6th was the end of the moratorium, so from August 7th, I believe, which is a Saturday, is when it would go into place. But because of the mediation portion, and I hope that because of all the millions of dollars that were put in to help with rental assistance, I hope not as many people were getting evicted, but people were still calling me. I did a Maui News, every single paper, and I published all the contact information numbers if you were being threatened with eviction, or if you needed to find out how to pay your rent, who to call, which is MEO, Catholic Charities, and the county has been pretty religious, even before the pandemic, to help with these kinds of problems. So MEO has funding from us over and beyond what came through with the new Rescue Act money. But it's bad, but it doesn't sound like it got as worse as it was from what I'm hearing on the mainland. I think only the state of New York had to, keep the moratorium going. Other than that, I think we lifted our moratorium,
Yeah.
And but my new thing that I'm trying to do is I was getting calls because of the press release that I went out in every single paper. People are having a hard time and still affected by their by COVID, having a hard time paying their mortgage. And so you're a landowner, you lost your job, and you're still having a hard time paying, and maybe you didn't rent it out to somebody, so you can't get that rental assistance,
Mhm.
or maybe you're living in it, with your family. So I'm trying to get help for mortgage assistance is my new
Yeah,
thing.
people who are living in their own home, there's not as many options available. I mean, they did have
Yeah.
forbearances, but those forbearance
Yeah.
time, the way it was initially set up was awful. Basically at the end of the forbearance period, you'd have to have everything due. Now, fortunately,
Yeah.
it on an individual basis, so it depends on which mortgage provider you have. They're tacking it on to the end, which is great. And
That's good.
but there's not a lot of funds available like the same way that there is for renters, which is
Yeah.
is unfortunate because a lot of people live and rent in the same place. In terms of people affected by the eviction moratorium,
Mhm.
the funny thing is I haven't had a lot of local people contacting me that live on island. The people that
Mhm.
I've been communicating with are usually previously residents of Maui, and they're looking to return and affected by evictions on the mainland. And they're like, do you have any rentals available? Do you have a spot? And the rents have gone up so dramatically here
Mhm.
in the last 6-7 months that
Mhm.
they're just having very difficult time finding something that's even remotely affordable. I
Yes.
have a bit of an outlier. I did have one group of people. I was working towards selling a place well before the pandemic happened, and we took it off the market for over a year. And because the pandemic started to happen, and we wanted to kind of wait things out, and the owner of the home decided to rent it out. And she's like, well, what do you think? Should I rent it out? And I'm like, well, if you want to sell the property, it's pretty difficult. And she's like, well, I know them, and they were asking for a place, and just for 6 months. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Typically it's pretty hard. Once you get someone in there, you might have a limited period of time to find them a place, and it's becoming more difficult to get a replacement.
Mhm.
So if you let somebody in, I mean, you're going to have to deal with it at some point. And she thought about it, and then, decided, no, I'm not really comfortable. But the property manager decided to rent it out anyway. And that ended up, they paid their first month and deposit through PayPal, which anybody, just a red flag. If somebody tries to pay through PayPal, don't do it. There's, get a direct deposit or something else, actually cash. And they rescinded the payment. As soon as they moved in, they rescinded the payment and deposit. And she actually was living in the home at the same time. So they moved in, hadn't paid anything, and then immediately got a restraining order on the people who lived in the home.
Oh.
So they had to go out. Then they got free legal aid to the property, and ran a brothel out of it.
Oh my
So it's like,
God.
it's a real crazy outlier story, and basically got to live there for free for a year. And the person who owned the home nearly lost it because of not being able to pay anything during that period of time. I mean, they didn't want to sell their home. They had to. They ended up living in another home that they were having, she had renters in, and they were kind enough to basically let her have a place in their
Her own
property
home.
that she owned.
Oh my God.
And it was a really kind of crazy situation. She was pressed to sell at that point once she got them out, and it was under dubious circumstances that she had to deal with that. So it's pretty rare, but I've heard of a lot of people who were always had the intent to sell at some point, and were having renters in order to supplement their costs. Most renters are completely understanding and have this point out, but the problem is these poor renters, they don't have the ability to move freely to another property because People
No
are
inventory.
genuinely fearful of letting somebody rent their place because of the difficulty of getting people out and the bad taste that other people have had in. And, most of the renters, 90% are great people, and they understand the process and that, they're borrowing a property from somebody. But, that's my rare, I'm not into property management because of the difficulties and the very, very high errors and emissions insurance associated with it. In 20 years, I have one of the few agents have never been in any kind of legal trouble. I've never been sued because I'm very good about covering and having lots of contracts and emails and texts and basically call logs in place and explaining things in emails about the legal rights that you have and the potential issues that could go forward. And most importantly, disclose. But there's a lot of times that, these inevitable legal situations arise. And most of those are through long-term rentals. And that's why there's so few companies that are willing to do long-term rentals on the island here because of the headaches associated with it. But that being said, affordable
That's
housing.
so sad to hear.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How has it been with the council, Yuki, that you guys have had adjusted to this distance and a lot of the Zoom or the meetings? Has it been harder to be a council member? Has it been easy? I mean, of course, COVID, yes.
Yeah. So, God, as soon as COVID hit, which was March of last year, that we went online, and we've been like, I'm on the 8th floor in my office taking this call. And I'm the only one on this floor. And this is where all the council members' offices are and our chamber. It is locked. So you can't even come here unless if you have a key, a special security badge to get into the 8th floor or be allowed in. So we are completely shut off from the community and the people that we represent. For me, that's huge because one of the things that I always did was I would put up a booth once a month at the Upcountry Farmers Market. So I would put up a tent and just stay there with my clipboard and my, pen and paper, and people would come to me with their real property tax folders and if they have problems. But I believe I go to the community, right? And with this COVID numbers being as bad as they are, I haven't been able to do that. If you call my office, it will give you my cell number because my staff is not working here as they would have pre-COVID. And so if you call my office, they'll give you my cell number or you can leave a message. You can do one of the two things. And if you pull up my name on Google Earth, Google as a search, it'll give you all my contact information. But I'm very accessible, but I'm feeling the big puka that there is in not being able to be with people. Because it's so important, right? We represent the people, we're the voice of the people. And if we're not able to be with them, it creates a big void. And I also believe it's our responsibility to be out there for the people we represent. We shouldn't expect them to come to this, building to see us. And so it's big deal.
One of the things, you mentioned you talk with people, you have conversations with people. One of the things I hear all the time is, not from you, but from other people is, well, I talked to my council member and they did nothing. But really, as the council member, you've got to you're part of a group, right? That process, Yuki may have an idea, but you have to get everybody else on board, right?
Right. Exactly. So we're only one of 9 members and majority rules, and we need to follow the law, so we just can't help everybody, but wherever we can, we try to. One of the things that I'm waiting for the departments to get back to me on, something that I would think is important to you both as realtors, is I'm trying to develop a tiny homes ordinance.
Oh, cool.
As well as, we recently had an ag property, right? And we had someone that had their workers living in recreational vehicle. and that's illegal. You can't do that, you know. And because it's like, but people said, why not? Because it provides like an instant house, you know, for 4 people in a luxury recreational RV. But it's because of health and safety, right? Our big thing that we need to do is health and safety and water, right? So if you have a whole RV field of recreational vehicles that come up, there's no requirement for them to have a toilet, you know, and water, and, you know, how do they cook? What are the safety? Our thing is safety of our people, right?
Yeah.
So that is a concern for me, although I understand, you know, that it's a good place for people to, you know, 4 people to sleep in one RV unit, I guess, because it was a luxury RV. But I mean, we have big housing needs, so I'm waiting for my tiny homes legislation to come back from the departments and review by Corp Council, and then I'm gonna introduce it for this council to look at.
What are you asking? Are you saying that, hey, we should explore this idea, or what are you asking on the tiny homes? Because it's been thrown around for years.
Yeah. So there's how big is a tiny home? I don't even remember. Is it 400 square feet? It's pretty small, you know. But whatever it is, let's look at it, because there's a need out there. So that was my position, but I'm surprised at how long the departments are taking to get back to me. So I think it's not as simple as I think it is.
It's wastewater disposal. You know, that's a big thing, especially out in Haiku. How many people are you going to allow to flush toilets into one septic system? And obviously, then at some point, you're going to need to have a larger waste management system as opposed to just, you know, one septic system. So, you know, there you got to think of the number of that you're allowed. Increasing that many people in an area is traffic flow issues and whatnot. To me, mobile homes is a phenomenal solution, but obviously, you know, you have to consider hurricanes. So, you know, you're going to have to properly adhere them to the ground through hurricane ties, and, you know, to turn a temporary structure into a more permanent one. You know, I don't think there's rating systems for trailer homes the same way that there is for housing. But of course, that's one of the big issues and the reason housing is so expensive. I mean, back in the day, single wall construction, you could call up Sears, well, not call, you send a letter with a pigeon, get to Sears, and, you know, they would ship a home and you would build it yourself. And many of those same homes that, you know, went up in a couple of weeks are now for sale for over $1 million because of the location. And, I mean, we're talking homes I can go into and through one of the knots in the side, see outside. Now that house can get built up relatively affordable, quick, and modular housing has been something that's been introduced for a very long time. But the thing is there's no process in the law, you know, for building of homes like that, because you can actually create housing here that is affordable, like a tiny home, but still it's like, you know, the plumbing requirements, electrical requirements, that, you know, double wall construction, electrical, you know. That's why something that's more, I can purchase a tiny home in the mainland or a pop-out home or a double wide, you know. And why some of the fabricated homes are so great is because some of them meet the requirements already, other ones don't. And mobile homes is one of those things that, you know, need to be looked at specifically and vary so much from model to model.
Yeah. And yet, you know what? We have such a huge housing need, right? So I thought it was beginning of this term. One of the first things that I sent to the chair for referral is tiny homes, thinking, oh, no big deal. We'll get this done. It is a big deal. So, and I really believe, because health and safety, right? And what does it mean in terms of, and water? Okay, so let's talk about infrastructure. So infrastructure, which is Department of Environmental Management, which is wastewater and solid waste, right? So that's all in my committee, as well as roads. And then I have transportation, so I have all the buses. That's in my committee. And I really believe that our responsibility for the council is to build roads and to help developers so that they can do what they should do, which is build houses. And we should take care of what we're supposed to be doing, which is an infrastructure. So an organization that you as realtors may be interested in learning more about is what House Maui is, what Hawaii Community Foundation is doing. So last year they decided to focus on Maui and we have the worst housing shortages or housing situation in the state, right? So they took us, as I call it, we're like their guinea pigs project, so pilot project, I should say guinea pigs, but pilot project. And they're trying to help us through the process of doing things so that we can get our housing built, number one. Number two is getting the infrastructure supported and getting built so that we can have more houses. So it's a huge problem. Did Clint say he lives in Haiku?
No, I actually, I lived for a very long time in Olinda, right above Makawao, but actually now I'm down in Kihei. I've lived here for 12 years with my wife and our 2 kids. I've been selling real estate for 20 years and, conceived and raised on Maui. So I've been here for over 31 years now. And, but yeah, Haiku is one of the few places that there is some affordable housing, but regardless, it is the infrastructure issue that's the biggest one. And that's why I like the idea of putting it on the shoulders of the county as opposed to the developers. It's impossible. It's somebody's entire career to make one project. I mean, 15 to 25 years to get those entitlements is impossible. And in addition to just the simple costs themselves, the holding cost of that property is immense over 20 years. Because they have to pay the loans off, they have to pay the taxes on the property, they have to maintain it, and deal with insurance for the property. So not to mention just hitting their head against the processes of putting that infrastructure in place and the generally very limited resources of most developers. I mean, if you put infrastructure costs on that of the developer, that only limits it to massive developers. You're not going to get, smaller projects. And people really, really fail to realize that most of the affordable projects, they're losing money. They're not making money. They're doing it simply from the charity and realizing that there's this massive shortfall. And I do love the idea of having a budget in place for the county to create this. But, one of the issues that I alluded to before the show started is one of the proposals. And that's the idea of changing transient vacation rentable Manitoya properties into long-term housing. There's about 7,000 vacation rentable properties that are grandfathered in. Now, they designed these properties to be vacation rentable, and they're in the initial charters for the development themselves to be vacation rentable. That's why they have insufficient parking, insufficient storage, not enough closet space, tiny kitchens. I mean, they're more like hotel rooms than they are whole housing for people, not to mention their aging infrastructure and the amount of income that they generate for Maui County. In a recent radio show that we did, I actually posted and put it on my Maui Luxury Real Estate Facebook page, and I said this. The problem is this is a gift to the hotel industry that would create a myriad of problems for the island. As Jen Russo, which she's the Maui Vacation Rental Association, short-term rental tax classification brings in the largest amount of real property tax revenue. And certified value in FY 21-22 is roughly $12.7 billion. That is a $2.5 billion increase from the year before, or 25% of the raised rent revenue. That is equal to 17% of the operating budget and 37% of the entire real property tax revenue. So for comparison, the hotel classification is based on 29 million, and our residential homeowners in the owner occupied class brought in roughly 33 million. It is worth noting the non-owner occupied hotel and resort and timeshare classifications all saw decreases in certified value last year. And the lower rental being generated of those categories in 2022, yet the county was able to increase their income by 20 million this year, largely from these STR classified rentals. There are 13,466 TMKs in short-term rental classifications. The average amount of real property tax paid per unit is roughly $10,576. So using a broad estimate, those 7,000 units generate 74 million in lost real property tax revenue. For perspective, our operating budget is $843 million. So this would account for 8.77% of the operating budget. So that's one of the reasons that's really terrifying to me. If they change the Manitoya classification, it's going to devastate property values, because they're going to try, if they try to sell their place that's, let's just say, worth $1 million, they're not going to be able to sell it for the proper value, because they're only going to be able to sell it as a residential unit. So it makes no sense to sell their place. They're able to rent it out. They're able to get money off of it, you know, based on that. They're not going to want to sell. So it's going to stifle the, you know, real estate economy. Lots of people are going to be coming in and continue to come into Maui to buy a property here. They want to be able to purchase something that they can help pay for their costs. That inventory is going to dramatically decrease. And the only option that they're going to have is to buy something that's equivalent. If they sell it, they're only going to be able to sell it as a residential unit. And, you know, these are often in districts that are already high. So that means, you know, oceanfront properties in Ma'alaya, you know, South Kihei locations that are, you know, right across from the boat ramp or whatnot. It's a poor strategy to strip property rights from one person in order to give it to another. So, yeah, no, I think that it's essential for Maui County to create taxable revenue and say, hey, we need to increase infrastructure in this place. We're going to do that by getting a loan or, you know, a security against that area. We're going to tax the new property that's going to be built there. And that is the foundation which all affordable housing gets built across the United States. I don't know why they haven't been doing this here. And then that's been the proposal to do it in the future. So if you do that, the budget where this money comes from would shrink so dramatically. It's going to make a shortfall. There's going to be lots of suits against the county. We're talking thousands of suits, both in terms of, you know, group suits as well as individual suits. So I think it's a poor solution to the problem to strip property rights. And I'd like to see, you know, the steadfast process of going and taking loans out to build that infrastructure so that the little guys have the ability to build property. So
couldn't it be, Yuki, let me ask you this. Have we looked at, you know, to me, I look at the biggest, just real quickly, I look at the biggest affordable project that ever happened on Maui in my mind. That was before me, was Kahalui, right? Increment 1, 2. Why can't we model something like that because the county was involved in that, right?
I don't know that quite the history, but Dream City, that whole story, it was the sugar plantations who were at one time having plantation homes, and they were getting rid of the plantation homes. And so what they did was they provided this opportunity for all of these, you know, was not only HCNS, because at that, there was also Wailuku Sugar, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, sugar plantations then that Arizumi Brothers, which is a development company that we know today, they were part of the solution of being there to build homes and build these affordable homes and opportunities for these sugar plantation workers. So that's kind of how Dream City began, you know, And of course, costs were so different. You read,
Yeah.
I was looking at newspaper articles and they're saying they bought a house for like, I don't know, 20,000 or whatever, Of course, that was relevant at that time and that was a lot of money. But
Private-public
yeah,
partnership.
yeah, and that's really what it'll take. So just so you understand a little bit about the county, when I say that we should build infrastructure, one of the things that the county can do is that we can float bonds. You must hear about our great bond rating. And so the county of Maui can use our own best resources, which is to build something, and we know roads are going to last hopefully 30 years. So you get a bond for 30 years and you stretch it out like a credit card, right? A payment over, over many years so that it becomes affordable. So there's things that we can do as a county, and we can also partner with the state to assist us, because the state legislature has a lot more fiscal powers than we do. So there is that House Maui that that I told you guys you should look at with Hawaii Community Foundation. They have come here. Well, they always had an office, Hawaii Community Foundation, above Marcos and Kahului on Hana Highway. So they're there, but their focus is to how to help us do the things that we're talking about, which is infrastructure, providing rentals, providing homes. Because what's happening is right now Maui has a worst housing situation in the state, right? So we can create our own dream city. We can do all those things if we can put our minds together and kind of get focused on what we want to do. And in my committee, which is infrastructure and transportation, I hope that I'm able to, one of the things that I'm trying to work on right now through my committee is the Kahului wastewater system by the airport. There's that wastewater system foundation, wastewater plant by Amala Street and Kanaha Beach Park. We need to gradually decentralize that and build a wastewater system in Central Maui. So I'm working with the administration and the state of trying to get funding so that we can build a wastewater system, and slowly it's going to take us years, but to decentralize the Kahului Wailuku, I guess it's called, because it services that area, but to decentralize that and gradually build infrastructure inland, so we're off the shoreline, is a problem. So there's things like that we can do, but as you know, everything takes a long time, but it'll take years. But along the way, if we all kind of walk in the same step, I think we can do it. So I always like to talk to realtors because I want to know what you're hearing out there. How can we help you? Because we need you and you need us, right? We're all trying to help the same people. And so
I have to find myself sending mailers to neighborhoods, because I have a lot of, friends and family and clients and, that live already here on island, and they want to make a move. They want to do something, whether that's, moving from North Kihei to Maui Meadows, or, go into, a Wailea home, or buy their first home. The people that I work with that do Mr. and Mrs. Claus for Friends of the Children's Justice Center, they're trying to, get out of a condo and buy their first home together. And it's next to impossible. There's so little available inventory. We're not looking, okay, I get people and they're like, we're ready to buy. And, normally I would go out and get them pre-qualified and go look at homes. Right now, they're pre-qualified. We're looking at future projects that won't be completed for years from now. And in addition to that, I'm, sending mailers to particular neighborhoods, asking if people are interested to sell their property. And they're, of course, always going to be fixer-uppers. They're well aware of this. And so I end up finding myself writing, hundreds of letters and blanket marketing an area in order to, try to find something for my clients. It's really one of the most successful avenues I have right now to help my buyers out. And, traditionally I'm a lister. I have normally at any given time 30 listings, and right now I have less than 6. And it's really tough right now what people are having to deal with. It's a bad situation, and a lot of people would sell their place, and they are on the fence about it because what are they going to do? Where are they going to move? There's no options available out there. So even though they can get top dollar, where are they going to go? And unless they're thinking about moving to the mainland, there's just not an option.
Is the council, you guys have done the grant thing to help the first time buyers. It was run through the council, right? Are you guys going to continue that? Because I've heard positive things about that. Is that going to continue for the future, you hope?
Yes. So the first time home buyers, they just did their lottery last week, Friday. And of course, I don't know how many people applied. I'm sure it's hundreds.
Yeah.
And I hope that, I was thinking that because of the pandemic, there wouldn't be as many people, but there still were a lot of people that applied. And what they did, they pulled as many entries, they pulled everybody, because not everybody ends up buying, right? So it just goes down the line. But yeah, we are continuing to do that. We will continue to do that. Yeah.
And
it's important.
The current term for our council members goes through 2022, and then
every 2 years.
2 years, and I believe you're going to be going again, right? Okay.
I'm on my third.
Yes,
this is my third.
we need people who give their cell phone out. That's really nice of you.
And besides, I mean, I can see besides the coronavirus pandemic, is the number one priority for the council has been affordable, and then
housing. Yeah.
Affordable housing. And I guess from that, you see the different things that the affordable housing, without that being there, you see the negatives that are happening in the community. Like you have a lot more homelessness, you know what I mean? You have a lot more of this. So is that your priority, one of the top priorities? What are your 3 priorities that you're trying to work on?
So again, infrastructure, because I really believe that's going to help housing. So if I can do the Central Maui wastewater system, right, to build that as a start, that's a big priority for me. And then, as you know, because you're in the business, the Waikapu Town project, which is Michael Atherton's project. So, and all the different projects that we've approved on Waiale Road. So that's all going to be affordable homes that'll then be able to use the new infrastructure, as well as there's Hawaiian Homelands right before Waikapu. There's a Hawaiian Homeland project that is coming up. And so that's going to be new housing. And so therefore, that's all why we need to build, the road improvement, Waiale extension, I guess they call it, road improvement, as well as the wastewater system. So I'm a big advocate for infrastructure. And I live up country. I represent Kula and, Makawa, not Makawa, that's Mike Molina's district, but Pukalani and Kula, Ulupalakua. And I will tell you that all of you know, every year you hear about, we just had July 1, drought, right? So don't water your plants. And every year we do it. So why are we doing it every year? I mean, we need to find more water.
And there's enough. We actually have more water than Oahu has. Our big problem is infrastructure, just like we have one of the most massive water tables that are available. Obviously, there's the water rights associated, that go back to the plantation day with runoff and rivers and things that need to be addressed appropriately. And that's a very tenuous topic, but we have more than enough water for drinking. It's just a question of getting to it, putting the retention bases, the tanks, the pumps, and that costs money. And the best way to do that is to, allow the developers create the infrastructure so that we have, affordable housing. I mean, we're at almost 10,000 home shortfall for the local people that are here. And unless the county steps in and do what you're talking about, we're going to never make that shortfall. But we need big plans. We don't need 1,000 homes is nothing. 500 homes is nothing. And we're building a fraction of that every year. We need big plans that are building, 2,500 3,000 homes at, below market value rates. And unless there's big plans to do that, like creating massive infrastructure, massive roads, that go and allow people to bypass these traffic areas. I mean, I'm so excited for the high school to get built in Kihei. That has been a long time coming, and to see that it's on the horizon is great. But unless there's a bypass behind there that connects from the Kihei police station to
Go around
to Kahului and or upcountry, there's going to just be a disaster. I mean, already with the charter school that's there, it's a bit of a juggle. They've done a wonderful job by having a crossing guard there to deal with those issues, but still every day, even with the lower amount of traffic as a result of COVID, it is a disaster that's waiting to happen. So I think housing needs to be put all behind there, and in order to service that housing, a road needs to be there to get to both South Kihei toward the hotels where jobs are, and Kahului where people are going. That's just going to continue to be, an awful situation in terms of driving. It's going to add, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to an already crowded process. So money's the big problem. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that's not something that's available to the developers that are here on island. I've had my idea, I've talked about in other shows about subsidizing those costs to actually create real affordable housing here, and say, hey, developer, if you sell these properties for $450,000, I know your build cost is $750,000, and you need to sell it for $850,000, even to realize the tiniest of profit. Instead, sell it for $450,000. If you do that, we'll give you the ability to vacation rent this property for 5 years. That means they're going to net roughly $100,000 for every year that they're doing that. That money goes into the real equity of the property, and that means local economies, local developers, and local people are going to benefit from that equity, because if they go to sell that house in 10, 20 years after they acquire it, that's their retirement. That's their future in place. And that's one of the few things that the Constitution allows, is for a limited sale and limited rights to the developer to develop affordable housing for local people. Otherwise, you can't. There's laws and rules in place that aren't fair, because we have the free movement process and free economies that just don't allow these wide rules. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but there needs to be visionary processes in order to put 2,500 homes every year to local people. And until there's big dollars behind it, there's just not going to be a way to do it.
So you do know that whenever there is a affordable housing project that is required to have an affordable unit for sale, that it is highly subsidized, right? You do know that.
Yeah.
And it's highly subsidized by two ways, right? One is the market homes that are being sold. So they're selling at 800,000 or maybe now it's $1 million, but having to then subsidize the homes that they're required to with medium incomes, and the house would go for sale for 400,000 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're talking about, the actual cost, let's say it's 800, but we have to sell it for 400 because of the affordable housing and reaching the AMIs.
Yep.
And so two things happen. One is, but the market homes will pay for the difference, or you can go after HHFDC, which is a state organization. They have funds that a developer would qualify for, but it all gets subsidized. So it all gets paid for by you, the taxpayer, So I'm not too sure. I got to think about your idea about using the home for a affordable, to do short-term vacation rentals, or to pay for it, because that is I don't know if you can. If you're going to use
You'd
taxpayer
have to add a
dollars,
special rule in place. I mean, you would have to
but
develop
it's more than
a
that.
license.
It's
Yeah.
it's more than that. You know
Yeah.
why? Because you're using my tax dollar now to help somebody else earn money over
But
and
you're not.
beyond.
It's not a tax dollar. It's a special license. So the way it would work is you would say in order to have the right to vacation rent, there's a provision that you have to sell that property for a predetermined value. So you can do that on a per square footage basis, a per bedroom basis, or what have you. And it is very doable. It's just a question of putting the legislation, because it is a very complicated idea, no doubt.
I think what it is, it's, and we're probably exploring something, we're kind of vague, and it's an idea that you would have to sit down and put it in writing. I think there's, the
really
main
think
thing
so.
is, for me, I think the main thing, and I enjoyed this conversation, is number one is our council member, whether she represents my district or not, she's willing to open her ear and listen. And I think that's the main thing, is having the conversation. Now, what we could do later on, Clint, you could, maybe send something to Yuki or the politicians. They can see it in writing. Then they can say, hey, that's a great idea. Or Clint's in left field, let him go. You know what I'm saying? So,
But you should send it, yeah.
But the main thing is the idea. I think that's the concern. Is the big thing is all three of us are on the same page, and everybody else. Affordable housing is what's Maui's needed, because we have thousands of kids graduate each year that they're either going to live with their families, or maybe less than 1% are going to end up buying a home. The rest of them are leaving our islands, which happened to me and my children. So, and I appreciate that with Yuki. And I think we're almost near the end. And what I wanted to ask Yuki is, I don't even know if you have any children. Are you married? I just know you're always out there. Tell me about you as we end this. Who is Yuki?
Oh, you're ending with a thing I like to talk too much about, but
let's hear it. Clint talks about is affordable.
I'm married. I have a husband, one husband my whole life, right? And I have a son. He's 29 years old, and he's a data scientist. He's a genius like my husband. He's just a number cruncher and very creative. He lives in Chicago, unfortunately. And that's where his job is now. But now they're working from homes. I guess he can live anywhere. But and I love my family, right? So everything I do, I would not do this job. I always tell anybody who wants to hear advice about it, being a council member, is you do not do this job if you have small children.
No doubt.
It takes away so much time from you. I mean, before the pandemic, there would be times where I wouldn't see my husband. He would go to sleep and I come home, right? Because I'm at meetings or doing different things. And so therefore, it's not a job that you can take on a part-time basis. You got to do this very seriously. Yeah. And you owe it to the constituents that vote you into office to sit in the chair and help make decisions. So I want to end by telling you this, is that my cell number is 808-870-8047. And I really do want to hear from people. So this pandemic has put a damper by me not being able to go out in the community and set up a table at the Upcountry Farmers Market and sit there and help constituents. But I am always available by phone, or you can email me. And I really do want to help people if I can. And sometimes I think the smallest thing we can do is to help people who are getting stuck in our bureaucracy, because government is very cumbersome and confusing, and people think, oh, I can do it, but it's sometimes hard. So if my office can help, I have really good staff we do constituency work. And I have staff who've been here way longer than me, so they have good relationships with the departments and can help by, looking into things and helping people. So I just want to end by saying, I really appreciate this. I always like to ask realtors, well, what do you see? Because we say one thing, but you guys see what's the reality out there. So I hope you do send to me your idea, because it's an idea, right? And let's see how it pencils out. Absolutely. And I mean, let's do it. So and again, I hope to be able to introduce soon tiny homes legislation, and to look at the recreational vehicle situation. I think it's not that safe for people
Yeah.
to live in it because there's no bathroom there's no infrastructure that's connected to it. You're going to have to have it pumped out, I guess. I'm not too sure.
So it depends on the size, and there are ways to bypass it. For the ones that do have bathrooms in it, they typically have a holding tank, and you can go from the holding tank into a central waste management system. Nonetheless, it's always the question of how big your waste management system is versus the number of bathrooms and people that are on the property and all that stuff. And that's something, just like my idea is great, but until the details are hammered out, it's like how many people, you might have had 24 people living in a particular area. And then if 1 2-acre property now has 12 people on it, you just increased it by 50%.
Exactly.
Or 25.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
It always has to take it into consideration. And I think that would be phenomenal for special licensing to do something like that. Say, hey, we have a desperate need right now here on Maui for all these people that are living along the beach. And, there's improper waste management systems, and they're having to go shishi, near the ocean, and that's affecting the reefs out there. And, having some central place is going to be superior for both the environment and the people living there, so that they can have resources and job opportunities, as opposed to being so far removed into kind of some of the more beautiful but outskirt areas. So I think that's a brilliant idea and needs to be addressed. There has to be a vehicle to do that. And right now there isn't in Maui County rules. So I love it. I think it's just a question of hammering out the details, just like my idea,
Well, and Andy, besides your cell phone, Yuki, how can they also follow you or reach out to you? Facebook or county?
So I have all of it, right? So I try to post every day on Instagram that goes into Facebook, right? So I try to post every day something that's going on. I have a constant contact account, which is an e-news account. I have thousands of members, but I try to, communicate as best as I can. And you can always email me, just my name, yukilei.sugimura@mauicounty.us or Yuki Lei Sugimura @gmail. Everybody has Gmail, right? So I look at all of that as much as possible. But I so appreciate you reaching out to me. And what I want to do is, I know that Clint went through all of his data about how many homes are on short-term vacation rentals and what we would lose. And can you send that to me? I want to data check that.
I'll shoot that radio show to you. And I'm sure you have Jen Russo and Jason Economou's contact as well.
I do.
But I'll send that to you right after the show.
Okay, send it to me. Because I have the real estate appraisal book, that we get every year, and I can tell you exactly what it says. And I can double check your numbers. It's interesting.
A good one is, Halekemaole is right next door to Kihei Shores. So they're a perfect example because they're similar square footage. One's vacation rentable and one's non-vacation rentable. And it's basically half the value by comparison. So, it is going to depreciate somebody's value so dramatically that's going to be considered constitutional taking. And eminent domain laws will apply. And I think it's just going to be impossible to go through that. So, thank you so much, though, for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Love how you reach out and you're always available to the people. And I look forward to following your career out there and reinforcing what my wife says is there's no way I'm getting into politics. My kids are 8 and 10. So
wait till they're older. I would not do this. My son graduated and then I took the step. I would never do this to a family. It is a lot. Yeah. But I love your personality. You could do it. You could do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Byron Yap of Axia Home Loans. Thank you so much for arranging the show and having Yuki Lei on. It's been fantastic to always be educated about the process to make things happen here on Maui. And if anybody's ever looking to refinance their home or get a loan for their first place, or, get a jumbo and buy a Maui Meadows or a Wailea house, he is your guy. He's fantastic. He's available and has incredible loan packages available. I'm Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate. You can visit my website, mauirealestate.net. It's a massive resource. We get actually over 40,000 unique visitors every month to it. And we have statistics that you can see. We got tax codes that you can look at, easy search features that are a lot simpler than most of the other processes out there. So go to mauirealestate.net. And we're broadcasting at mauirealestateradio.com. You can listen to this or any show there. And it's on 7 a.m. Mondays on the KAOI radio group, broadcasting at 11:10 a.m., 97.6 FM, 98.7 FM, and 95.5 FM on the west side. Aloha and have a good day.